I'm walking around just aimlessly in my house. It is 5 minutes to 7, but I hear that which you just heard. I heard that laugh. And I was like, it's time to go talk to my good friend, Dewey Freeman.
Here we are. And I cannot tell you how much I look forward to this.
Oh my gosh.
And connecting with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We're the Elder Council. Dewey, I've been, I work with folks all the time around what's their core idea. A lot of times it's what's the core idea of a talk that you're going to give, and how do we remove everything away from the core idea so we could just focus on that, because we only have a very short period of time to do this talk. Yet there is another application of the core idea, and it reminds me of a line from Hamilton where he says to Alexander, if you don't know what you stand for, what will you fall for?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda knows how to put together a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And
you don't know what you stand for, what will you fall for?
Yeah. If you don't have a rock solid foundation of belief in what you stand for, then if someone comes with an alternative belief, will you fall for it?
Mm. Or if you know what you stand for and somebody comes and tries to push you off that rock, are you willing to fight for that?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. And that's character. And the Greeks had a word for it. It was called ethos.
Mm-hmm. And talk a little bit more about the origins of that, if you know, because that word to me carries a lot. That word to me is a very powerful word.
Well, then explain that, and then we'll go into the definition.
Ethos to me has to do with, well, let me come at it this way. When I say the word ethos, I feel it in my core. I feel it right in the core of my system, the core of my body, the core that that in martial arts is that you're always in touch with, if you're working correctly. The core that when I'm riding my horse, that's where I'm connecting directly with my horse, and the core of my system, even in relationships and frankly, even in making love. It's like if I lose that core, then all of those things are, they're more about doing those things instead of being those things. So that's where I go with that.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it is. Right. It's moral character. Actually, the original, I think where it is now is, do you have an ethos? We talk about it when we coach, and we think that people are drawn to an ethos. Like, what do you stand for? Like, what's your moral character? And the Greeks, it comes from the Greek argument, the argumentative style that the Greeks pioneered, right? Aristotle did. And ethos is the way which you establish credibility through exposing your moral character. So it's a form of persuasion, as it turns out. So that's it's ethos, logos, and pathos, and logos is words, and pathos is the emotion. And
so say those three again. Those are pretty big words. Ethos.
Yeah.
Those are really, they're little words, but they're big words.
Yeah. So this is all from rhetoric, this is all came from Aristotle. And I am, if the reader sees my eyes moving down, I'm looking at What I think is probably one of the best descriptions of this is from Neil Gaiman, the writer. And I was introduced to him, actually never read any of his books, which people will probably right now going, "You're kidding me." He's well known, but
You're kidding me.
but he talks about ethos as moral character, and pathos is the emotional appeal. So in rhetoric, in rhetoric, I'm speaking, I'm trying to influence that person, right? That's what the Greeks are doing. They would have these great debates, right? That's where all that came from. And so the ethos was that moral character which establishes my credibility. Pathos was the emotional appeal I'm making through my writing or through my argument. And logos was the logical appeal. Logos, logic, right? Which also means words, right? So it's what are the words that I use, but you need the logos is grounded in credibility, right? So we need to be able to appeal to the mind, body, and heart, if you will, right? Of the other person that we're trying to influence. So I do that through storytelling, right? And through interviewing and through communications. But this is not new stuff. This is, several thousand years old. I'm reminded though of in Neil Gaiman's masterclass, he had a line that I've written down and I see it every day. It says, "How can you be eccentric if you don't know where the circle is?"
And in this case, okay, my mind is like, I'm seeing a circle, and in my world, eccentric means being outside of the circle.
Bingo.
And so how can you step out of that
if you don't know where the circle
if you don't know what you're stepping out of?
Right. Which is, how can you need to have this foundation that ethos provides you. So you have a moral center, a moral core, right? And that's what keeps you grounded. It's all of these things, but for me, I love it when it can be distilled into a single word or a triplet of words that you can carry with you. And when you find yourself straying outside of that, the gravitational pull of your ethos pulls you back, grounds you, gets right. Because what do we want to do when shit starts to get off the rail? Eccentric, I'm out. What happens?
Very nice. So could we, for general discussion, at least generally say that ethos is, in maybe this discussion, is begs the question of, what do you stand for?
100%.
So what I wonder, and I know that you and I have spoken about this a lot,
which is why we've not done a show specifically on it, and I thought it was time we did that.
Yeah, right on. And because you and I, through many of our discussions, whether it be on here or private discussions or just relational discussions, it's like, what do you stand for? And what I wonder about with our audience is, if I said to everybody that's listening to this and seeing this, do you know what you stand for in the world? And are you willing to be transparent about what that is that you stand for? And are you also willing to be congruent with what you're standing for?
So when we work with people, there's a part of what we do is because we do a lot of personality branding and working with individuals who have build a business around an idea. It's the same thing, right? And so
Totally.
so they're hiring the human. So in an effort to get them to know, like, and trust you as quickly as possible, you want them to know your moral character, right? The things we just talked about, right? So I'm
Totally.
making, in my rhetoric, how I speak, I'm making an argument, choose me. So the best way to do that is for you to know at the core of, let's just go there quickly. So on the
Hmm.
home page of nearly everyone we work with is their ethos,
Right.
right? Because I want people to see that. So if you go to my page, you'll see working me with me is like, these are the things that are important to me. Boom, boom, boom.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you have it labeled ethos? What do you have it labeled as?
I'm gonna look. I know some of our folks have done it where it says my ethos, where they actually do it. And I'm looking to see. Um, uh, I just is how we'll work together. Years ago, I abandoned the idea of putting values for up for all to see. Instead, I call them observable behaviors and reflect
Mm.
each week to see if I can find an example of how they've been put into practice. Do you have values that you can see in action? These are mine. Solve
Oh,
problems
wow.
visually,
Hmm.
cultivate emotional intelligence, stay curious forever, show up, be present, listen loudly, and make every moment memorable.
I love those. I love those.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's uh Traver has it, lots lots and lots and lots of people, because we think of that's so important. Now that's my business ethos, right? My personal ethos comes from the tenets of my martial arts and Hapkido, which we've talked about a lot on the show: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And I've written at length on those tenets. In fact, um, I'm going to write again because my year, you know how we've named our year? Mine is the 2022, the year to write it down. And so
Ah.
I've been doing a lot
Oh,
of
and you
writing.
have been doing that, right on.
Yeah, been doing a lot of writing. So I think of, and I each time we go for a black belt, we had to write an essay to Grandmaster. And I've written on the tenets extensively as they apply to business and how business and personal is so interwoven with me,
Hmm.
that the tenets are all interwoven in that. But I wanted to explain those things in a different language. So what I just read you was what those tenets look like. So when I said observable behavior, it's okay, you can have those tenets, but what do they look like?
What are other people seeing and experiencing
Right,
with you while you're
right,
doing that?
right, right.
So would it be a fair thing to say, if you could picture like a pyramid, is those five personal tenets or ethos are at the base structure of the pyramid?
Yeah, sure.
And then what you shared with in your business ethos is that might be the next layer.
Sure.
And um, would you, and I'm actually getting to something here, would it be reasonable to say that from those five basic core tenets that you're building something for your business? Would you also perhaps build something for your relationship? Would you build something for friendship? Would you build something? How would you sort of picture that?
Yeah, I could see the way they're manifested both maybe internally and externally. Maybe that's another way to think about it.
Okay, another structure.
How have I internalized those? They're all important. The one that spoke to me the most was I didn't quite understand indomitable spirit at first. Like I didn't really understand what that meant. And I know what the two words mean, but in this context, why did Grandmaster say why was that the fifth one? And he just looked at me like how come you don't understand this, Sylvester? Oh,
like what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, dude?
but he said, you can never be dominated.
Oh.
And that just hit me right now thinking about it. You can't be dominated.
Yeah, let that sink in. And for everyone listening, let that sink in. That's a really big deal.
So the way that shows up in business is you think of competitors very differently.
So please explain that some, because that's another huge statement.
So if you can't be dominated, then I'm going to own any arena I'm in. Right. So if I'm in a business arena, I will own that arena. I can't be dominated. I'll fight. I may fight like hell, 100%, but I won't be dominated. That's just such a core part of me now, right? Because that's been tested. That
more than once.
more than once.
Okay, so where I go with my relational process is and when you said that indomitable spirit, right?
Indomitable
spirit is that you'll never be dominated. If I'm in a relationship, and I believe I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it just for people to think, is part of our process trying to dominate?
No, not at all.
Exactly. Please
right,
go with that, because this is a really big deal.
Well, this is the core of the Dewey Freeman philosophy, right? Control v power.
Exactly.
Right. This is totally. So it's interesting how one of the things I love, ladies and gentlemen, is how at the act 3 of both of our lives, we've come at it from completely different ways.
Totally.
Couldn't be on different sides of the universe, yet in so many ways we are exactly the same. And in this, the way that tenet has shown up in you, because you are a skilled martial artist as well, in life and on the mat, right? So let's say that
I do my best.
Right. Well, it's all we can ever do, be the best me on today that I can be. Right. That is manifested philosophically for you into a practice that you then use with your clients for your entire career, 50 years of doing that. And you've isolated that down to the concept of power and control, right? And so indomitable spirit is something that happens to me. My spirit is so strong it cannot be dominated. There's nothing in there about dominating, because courtesy and integrity would disallow domination.
Exactly. That is so cool. See, that is so cool, because, and that to me is what, when you add those other two in, as well as other things, but when those are added in, and you said that it changes how you compete, and you were speaking at that point about the business world. It's like, for me, what that means is the way I also will never be dominated. And again, I came to this in a different through a
Right.
different door,
Right. Right.
and it's the same thing. But there's a difference between saying I'm never going to be dominated and trying to dominate. Those are two very different things. And many times what people do is their process of not being dominated is to dominate. That becomes a process for
Which is antithetical.
exactly. And people ask me, well, how did I get where I got? And because I've actually never advertised. I mean, I have a couple websites that are pretty minimal. If someone wants to go look, but I'm not putting out, come do this, come do that, come do this, come do that. That may change around a couple things that I'm kind of be putting together with your help. And but at the same time, it's like the way that I work on not being dominated is to be incredibly competent
Right.
and incredibly responsible for what I do.
To enter tenet 3 and 4, perseverance and self-control.
Exactly. So, so what obviously we're looking for is a balance with all of those, not one or the other, or two or three taking over the rest.
I you know me, I'm the chef, right? So I love recipes,
Yeah.
and I love, and so the recipe is called Ethos, and the ingredients are the 5 that I spoke about. And when I'm serving up, when I'm putting those to work, because most of the time that's just the drumbeat of my life, right? And at some times, whoo, shit's hit the fan, and I need to go to those. I need to really work on my courtesy right now because I want to punch somebody. I need to work on that. Or boy, here's a situation where my integrity is being challenged. Like there's an easy way right here. I take this easy way, but that I'm not integral at that point, right? So it's like,
Right.
so the more you have that strong core, you go, and so I look at sometimes as levers. So okay, let's when this needs a little more salt, this needs a little more pepper. We need to. One of my favorite examples is I was driving, and my daughter, who's a very, very accomplished wedding planner, we were talking in the car, and I'd called her, and how you doing? It's just overwhelming. Yeah, like that. We've all had that conversation with someone. He said, I was feeling a bit dickish. And I said, oh, so this is what perseverance looks like. She goes, Dad, really? Right now? I said, well, would now be a really good time to revisit your relationship with perseverance? She goes, yeah, yeah, thank you. That I didn't know that's what I needed, but that's what I needed. Right. Yeah. And to your point, it's perseverance is the thing that allows us to study as hard as we need to be ready to do the thing that we do. For instance, I'm persevering through this book because I know I need to know this stuff. I'm persevering through this hard work because this work needs to be done for some other reason, because I said I was going to do it, which touches my integrity. And you know what I mean? It's and indomitable spirit at that time is, even I can't dominate me. that's some meta shit for you there, dude.
Yeah. So, so at times we do end up wrestling with ourselves,
Oh,
and
fuck yeah.
it might be worth letting that go and checking back into what goes on in our core. What do we stand for? And then how are we going to do what we need to do?
And I'm then going to go to another. What's interesting, I think, at this age is we've had enough experiences where you can take the tenets from one discipline and apply them in other areas of your life. We see this all the time. For me, it's how did at 50, which is when I got into martial arts, how at 50 did that affect everything? And then how at 60, when I became an improver, how that affected everything. Because the principal tenet of improv is yes and. Right. Yes, accept the reality of what is happening right now. That is real. Shit that's happening right now is real. There's no judgment there. It's not right or wrong. That's not what we're saying. This is real. Okay. And suggests acceptance and addition. Okay, if this shit is real right now, I'm having this struggle, it's real. If I deny it, if I know, but I deny the reality, then everything stops. In improv, the scene stops. I really like that red velvet coat you're wearing now, sir. I don't have a red velvet coat on. What the fuck? That's a no but instead of right? Because you'll see that, right, in white belt improvers, because in their head they don't see themselves wearing a red velvet coat. But I've just said, and you go,
yeah, a red velvet coat on.
Yeah, I just took it off the guy I shot. Whoa! So I took that reality and added to it.
And I'm glad it's red because the blood doesn't show.
See, there you go. Perfect. And that tenet added to the other things operationalizes things. I think of that as well as what are catalytic things that catalyze that stuff that's there all the time, so that you can use it. You can, you can put it to work for yourself.
Right on. So let me throw. I like mind-blowingly love what you're saying.
It's Saturday.
It is Saturday. And so here's another piece that I think is incredibly powerful and important. So it's Thursday about noon, and I'm riding my horse Moondash. Moondash and I just crossed a creek. The creek is about 40, 50 feet wide. It was up to the bottom of his belly. We came out the other side, and I was like so incredibly happy with both of us and how we handled that. As we continued walking through down a path, the bush on either side was really high, and about maybe 100 yards off the creek, path is very narrow. A baby deer had been sleeping right next to the path and jumped up and ran through the bush. And poor little guy was like frightened. What that did was spook Moondash. He jumped sideways, probably 12 feet with me on him, straight sideways. And a friend of mine my friend is riding behind us, and she said, "You didn't even budge off of your horse." And I went, "Yeah, we're connected. he's allowed to struggle. And it doesn't have to change what happens inside me. Within 10 steps, everything was fine again. Moondash was blowing up, snorting and releasing it from his body. And we continued as if that didn't happen, knowing full well that had I freaked out about what happened, Moondash would still be freaked out. And so it was like, I could look at that as, wow, that was pretty fun. Wow, we did that really well. And both of us continued to breathe and move down the trail, enjoying ourselves, ended up trotting. He ends up shaking it all off. And within 30 seconds to a minute, everything's back to normal.
And the lesson?
The lesson is when we have our ethos, when we have our 5 core tenets that we live with, shit can go bad and we don't have to go bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a perfect example of a 5S story executed excellently. You did a great job of that. That was perfect. That was perfect. I want to go back to the masters. I want to go back to the tape. That was perfectly told. You set us up. It's 11 a.m. You set us up. You put us right there. You got us feeling like what the getting across the creek was like. We visualized it. The water was here, but we saw there was a bit of we didn't know there was a struggle. I thought you just crossed the goddamn creek, but no, it's like, whoa, you checked in with one another, and everything's still going along, and then bam, the snap, right? Or like the first unusual thing is boom, the struggle is and the shift in thinking is like, you don't think of it, but your partner sees that. So the shift can come from an external source, which is the end of the struggle, which says, wow, look what they just saw. What they saw was the equine therapist master living the stuff, right? Which is the exact point, which is when you have that grounded capability that's in your body. In your case, it's the somatic awareness of all of that stuff. When shit happens,
exactly.
And how,
and when shit happens, if we can stay in our ethos, that affects other people dramatically in dramatically positive ways.
Oh yeah. So back to it being part of rhetoric and argument and persuasion is that, and this is why that was an observed behavior. Your behavior was observed by someone else. The manifestation of that ethos and the core principle was in a situation that could have gone very bad, right? Was seen by someone else, and it's at that time that you influenced her,
right? It goes back to your tenets of
exactly
living it, and what do people see, what is the behavior, right? What are the outcomes of something, right? Instead of talking about it,
right? Because it's not what you say, it's what they see,
right? And what they experience with what happens with you, you bet.
Right.
And
it's what your kids see you do, how you react to a bad day at work. You come home and you're modeling that behavior. It's what your wife sees, it's what your girlfriend sees, it's what your boss sees, it's what all of those. It's some call it grace under pressure, which is just, how do you manifest? That's self. Again, it goes back to, in that case, grace under pressure is self-control and indomitable spirit, right? It's those two things. I have that. some might argue that those tenets are deeply personal and should not be shared.
Mm. My gut reaction to that it is probably sometimes that would be true. The more intimate a relationship is, the more in my world I would share something. So when I'm close and intimate with somebody, um, I would be more likely to share. This is the core of how I try to live. I most likely would not walk into a room and go, "Hi, my name's Dewey, and here's my 5 tenants." So I don't know. What do you think about that?
If if the goal in life is to have very positive, deep, intimate relationships, and intimate in the sense that they're vulnerable and real with everyone, as many people as you can, right? And I'm notwithstanding the clerk at the grocery store,
Absolutely.
right? Then getting getting to that so that they have an experience of you living that, rather not saying it, but living that tenet, right? That's why I call them observable behaviors,
Right
and
on.
living that so that they see it. I want to. I'm thinking about know, like, and trust. How do I get someone I don't know, an audience that doesn't know me, to know me? Okay, what am I doing? Have them know me. How does this cat think? To like me. Well, I like that point of view, and to trust me, right? Because I'm being vulnerable. Hence, they can be vulnerable and they don't have to have their shields up. They can lower their shields to
Right.
trust.
Right
So
on.
I want to know, like, and trust. And so we think the best way to get there, the quickest way, not the best, the quickest, because I don't have a lot of time, because I may not see that person again, right? And I may want to, but I need, we think it's through story, because story gives us an opportunity to touch into emotion, which gets us back to the very beginning, Doctor. Ethos, pathos, and logos were about rhetoric, which is about storytelling.
You bet. One of the things I believe that storytelling does is allow people to begin to experience jointly some of our experiences.
Yeah, yeah, and have
And
uh, all three of those words are really important, right?
yes,
Because I need the words to communicate the data. There was the facts. I mean, you told us how wide the river was. You told us how deep the river was, but we got the emotional feeling, which I hadn't considered, which was as soon as you get out, we did that. And it wasn't I did it or Moondance did it. It's we did that. So I had an emotional connection to that right away. And the ethos shows up in the sense that 10 feet sideways jump, and we're both grounded. And I love how Moondance shook it off and snorted. I heard that, right? I saw that. So again, the storytelling part of that, because that's an important story. The storytelling part of that gets all five senses in there, right? Because we got the sense of touch, absolutely got the sense of touch. I could imagine being on the horse, and I can imagine the brush going by you as you're going through it, and all of that stuff. And while we've broken that down so much, the power of that does get down to being able to incorporate and touch those areas.
You bet. And with the ethos, logos, and pathos, all of those allow us, when in relationship, to ultimately go through a tough time and come out okay, which is what Moon Dash and I did actually twice. One through the creek, which was a planned tough time, interestingly enough. And the other one was an unplanned tough time. And this goes all the way back to when we started, is if we don't know who we are and what we stand for, we can't do the rest of those things.
So the question to the audience, the person listening right now, do you know what you stand for?
Yeah. Do you know what you stand for?
My friend, let's bank this one.
Yeah, this is good. Thank you so much.
This was perfect.